Have you ever been pushed so far down that you thought you could not get back up? Elena Cross was there, a starving widow who had lost everything. She showed up at a stranger's gate looking for work, not a miracle. But the rancher who answered that door saw something else. He saw a survivor. Their one choice that day would change both their lives forever. This story proves that a second chance is always possible, so stick with me to the end. In the spring of 1882, Elena arrived at the Ward Ranch in Montana. Her clothes were in tatters. Her boots, held together with cloth strips, were barely on her feet. She had walked 70 miles through the wilderness, a ghost haunted by the husband she buried and the two sons she had to give up. She did not bother to fix her hair, which hung down her back in wet, tangled ropes. She had forgotten what it felt like to care about such things. The ranch before her was simple and weathered. A house, a barn, and a few empty corrals. Smoke curled from the chimney, a lonely sign of life against a big gray sky. It was a place built for survival, not comfort. Elena's stomach ached with a hunger that was days old. She simply stood at the gate, waiting. Asking for help felt like another chance to be told no. Waiting felt like she had not failed yet. Then the door opened. A man stepped out, holding a coffee cup. He was tall and lean, with a face carved by sun and hard work. He looked like a man who had seen his share of tough times. His eyes were a pale, careful blue, and they missed nothing. He studied her for a long, silent moment. Elena lifted her chin, refusing to look like a beggar even if she felt like one. "I'm looking for work," she said, her voice raspy. "I will do anything you need. I just need a place to sleep and something to eat." The man took a sip of his coffee. He looked her over, not with cruelty, but with a serious eye. "Are you running from something?" he finally asked. She thought for a moment. "No, just trying to run to something." "What might that be?" "A second chance," she said. The man nodded, like that made all the sense in the world. He glanced down the road she came from, then back at her. "Have you eaten today?" When she said no, he turned and went back inside, leaving the door wide open. A moment later, his voice called out, "Well, get in here before you wash away." She stepped inside a plain, clean house. It had a fireplace, a table with two chairs, and a small kitchen. The man was already at the stove, cracking eggs into a hot skillet. The smell was so powerful it nearly made her dizzy. "Sit down," he said without turning around. Elena sat, trying to keep her hands from shaking. He cooked without a word and set a full plate of eggs and bacon in front of her. She stared at it, afraid it was a dream. "Go on," he urged. She ate with a desperation that shocked her. When the plate was clean, she looked up and saw him watching her. "My name is Caleb Ward," he said. "This here is my ranch." "I'm Elena Cross," she replied, wiping her mouth. "Are you married, Mrs. Cross?" The question was blunt. "I am a widow," she answered softly. "I had two sons. I do not have them anymore." Caleb did not ask for details. He just poured her a cup of hot coffee. "I can't pay you any wages," he said. "Things are tight, but you can have a roof over your head and food on the table. That is all I can offer." Elena looked at the man. His face gave nothing away, but his eyes were steady and fair was more than she had hoped for. "That is enough," she said. "All right then," Caleb nodded. "You can have the back room. I will sleep in the barn. You work when I work, and you rest on Sundays. I will not ask about your past. Does that suit you?" It did. "Good. We start tomorrow," he said. "Today you rest. There are some clean clothes in the trunk by the bed. They belong to my sister." Elena was stunned into silence. She did not trust this kindness. Men did not give away a room in their house for nothing. They did not feed a stranger without expecting something in return. "Why are you doing this?" she had to ask. For the first time, Caleb's expression changed. It was not pity she saw, but something else. It was understanding. "Because I know how it feels to have nothing left," he said quietly, "and I know what it is like to need a chance that nobody is willing to give you." He stood up and walked to the door. "Get some rest, Mrs. Cross. Tomorrow gets here early." And with that, he left her alone in a warm house with a full belly and the promise of a new day. The work was hard, but Elena welcomed it. She cleaned, cooked, and mended from dawn until dusk. She worked until her body ached, trying to build a wall between who she was now and the woman who had arrived with nothing. Caleb worked right alongside her. He was a quiet man, but his presence was steady. They fell into a comfortable rhythm, working together to keep the small ranch going. They were partners in a fight for survival. He never asked about her sons or her husband, and she never offered the story. But one evening she found him looking at an old, faded photograph of a woman and two small children. He looked up and saw her. "My wife and my kids," he said, his voice thick with a pain that was old but not gone. "Lost them to a fever 5 years back." In that moment, Elena understood everything. His kindness was not a mystery. It was a memory. He was not just giving her a second chance. He was honoring the family he had lost by helping her fight for a future where she might one day get hers back. And for the first time in a long time, Elena felt a flicker of real hope. It was just him and the land. And now Elena, she learned his rhythm out on that ranch. He was up before the sun, checking the animals and fixing whatever needed it. He was a man who handled problems right then and there. He didn't waste words, and he was kind. Not with a big show, but in small, steady ways. When she burned the biscuits, he ate them without a word. Tampaman. When she cut her hand, he bandaged it clean and moved the sharp things up high. She kept waiting for him to ask for something in return. But weeks went by, and he never did. One night she was stirring stew while Caleb cleaned his rifle. The sun was setting, painting everything gold. He spoke without looking up. "You don't have to prove anything to me. I'm just doing my part," she said, her back still to him. He replied, "You're doing the work of 3 people and wearing yourself down to nothing." She finally turned, spoon in hand. His gaze was steady. "I have to earn my keep." "You do, but you act like I will toss you out if you rest for 5 minutes." Her hand tightened on the spoon. "You might." Caleb set the rifle down. "I will not. I gave you my word, and that means something to me." "I don't know you," she said. "No, you do not, but you have seen what I do." That was true. He had been a perfect gentleman. Elena turned back to the stew. "I do not know how to stop," she admitted in a small voice. "Then do not. Just slow down enough to see where you are going." It felt like smoke in her eyes, not tears. About a month in, the nightmares began. Elena would wake up gasping, calling out for her sons, Thomas and Benjamin. She would just sit there in the dark, hollow and shaking, until it was time to work again. Caleb never mentioned it, but the walls were thin. He knew. One morning after a terrible night, she found a hot cup of coffee waiting for her. A soft wool blanket was draped over her chair. Later that day, she finally told him. "I had 2 sons," she said. "Thomas was 7, and Benjamin was 5. Their daddy died. I worked every job I could, but I lost our home. I could not feed them." Her voice broke. "I had to take them to an orphan home in Wyoming. I told them I would come back for them." Caleb stood there listening, holding his hat. "I tried," she whispered, "but I failed them. I do not even know if they are still there." He was quiet for a long moment. Then he crossed the room and looked her straight in the eye. "Where is this orphan home?" "What?" She blinked. "Where is it located?" "In a little town called Remshin. But I can't. How long has it been?" 8 months. Caleb nodded, thinking. "We will go," he said, his voice solid. "We will find out if they are still there. And if they are, we are bringing them home. I do not have any money for... I did not ask if you did. We will take the wagon. If your boys are there, they come back here. It is as simple as that." "It is not simple," Elena said, her voice trembling. "That is a 3-day ride. It will cost money. You will lose a week of work. I cannot pay the fees." "Elena," Caleb's voice was firm, "stop telling me why we cannot, and listen. We are going Thursday morning. I have savings that will cover it. The ranch will be here when we get back. Your boys cannot wait." She stared at him, speechless. "Why would you do this for me?" she whispered. His face softened. "Because I know what it is like to lose family," he said quietly. "And if those boys are waiting for their mother, you deserve to be the one who walks through that door." Elena grabbed the table to keep from falling. "I do not know how to thank you." "Do not thank me yet," he said. "But you are trying. You are willing to try." She turned away so he would not see the tears, but they came anyway, hot and unstoppable. For the first time since leaving her sons, Elena allowed herself to feel hope. Caleb's voice was steady behind her. "We leave Thursday. And Elena, She looked back. "They are going to remember you," he said. "They are going to remember that you came back." She could only nod. He walked out, leaving her with the impossible thought that she might get a second chance. Thursday morning was cold and clear. Elena stood by the loaded wagon with her small bag. Caleb finished checking the straps and turned to her. "Ready?" he asked. Elena looked down the long road ahead toward Wyoming and gave a single, determined nod. Have you ever felt that awful gut punch of injustice? That feeling when a good person is backed into a corner with no way out? That was Elena, a mother forced to give up her children just to keep them alive. But this story is about fighting for a second chance, and it starts with one question. Can a broken family be made whole again? Elena stared at the far-off mountains, a cold fear creeping into her heart. She was going to get her sons back, no matter what. Caleb, the quiet rancher helping her, simply asked if she was ready. She wasn't, but she was going anyway. That was good enough for him. He helped her onto the wagon, and with a flick of the reins, their journey began. The miles crawled by. Elena's stomach was in knots, her mind a whirlwind of hope and terror. What if her boys, Thomas and Benjamin, didn't remember her? Or worse, what if they hated her for leaving? That night, as she stared into the campfire, Caleb spoke from the darkness. He told her kids do not hate their mothers for trying to save them. He just knew. The second day was tougher, the road rougher. To quiet her spiraling thoughts, Caleb started talking. He shared simple stories about the land and old cattle drives. It was a small kindness, a distraction that kept her fears at bay. That evening, she finally asked him why he was truly helping her. Caleb looked at the fire for a long moment. He said he had a wife and a daughter once. A winter fever took them both 7 years ago while he was away on a drive. He came home to nothing but graves. He told her he never got a second chance to say goodbye. But she did. She had a chance to walk back into her boys' lives. He said that somebody ought to get a second chance, and it might as well be her. It was his way of making something right in a world that had gone so wrong. Grief, he said, does not give you permission to stop living. On the third day, they arrived in a dusty little town called Redemption. The orphan home was a 2-story building with peeling paint. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. Caleb asked if she wanted him to go inside with her, but she knew she had to face this alone. He promised he would be right there waiting. Inside, the air was stale. A stern-faced woman in a gray dress appeared. Elena's voice was barely a whisper as she said she was looking for her sons, Thomas and Benjamin Cross. She had come to take them home. The woman left her standing alone in the hallway. An eternity later, Elena heard the sound of small, running feet. 2 thin boys appeared, swimming in clothes that were too big for them. It was them. Thomas saw her first, his eyes wide with disbelief. "Mama," he whispered. Elena dropped to her knees, her arms open wide, and her sons crashed into her. She held them tight, sobbing that she was sorry, that she had promised she would come back. Thomas mumbled into her shoulder that they knew she would. Just then, the stern woman returned, talking about fees, but Caleb was already there, standing in the doorway. He looked the woman square in the eye and said calmly, "Whatever she owes, I will cover it. We are taking the boys today." The woman, seeing she had no fight to win, went to get the paperwork. Caleb knelt beside Elena and the boys. Thomas, ever the little protector, asked if he was going to take care of his mama. Caleb said he planned on it. That was all Thomas needed to hear. With a nod, he decided this man could be trusted. Caleb helped Elena up, her son still clinging to her. "Let us go home," he said softly. The ride back took 4 days. The boys were quiet, like little ghosts who had seen too much. They sat huddled together, watching the world with wary eyes. Elena learned that trust, once shattered, had to be rebuilt piece by piece. Her boys were hungry in a way food could not fix. Benjamin's shoes were so worn out that Caleb had wrapped the boys' feet in cloth. They had been kept alive, but they had not been loved. At night by the fire, the boys sat close enough to feel her warmth, but far enough to run. Elena understood. A promise was just a word. She would have to earn their trust back one day at a time. And with Caleb's steady presence beside her, she finally believed she could. He did not talk much to the boys or try to force a friendship. He was just there, steady and calm, the same way he had been with her. When Benjamin jumped at a noise in the dark, Caleb just said, "That is just an owl," and kept drinking his coffee. The second night, Elena woke to see him sitting watch by the fire, his rifle across his lap, protecting them all. The next day, Thomas started asking about the horses. Caleb answered every question. Then he asked Thomas if he knew how to handle the reins. The boy shook his head. For the next hour, Caleb taught him, letting Thomas hold the leather straps. The boy's face was serious and focused, like it was the most important job in the world. And maybe for him, it was. Have you ever seen a child so broken by cruelty, they forget how to be a kid? That was Elena's boys, Thomas and Benjamin, fresh from 8 months in an orphanage that starved their bodies and their spirits. When a quiet rancher named Caleb offered them a hot meal, little Benjamin stared at the sizzling rabbit meat like it was a trick. He ate with shaking hands, expecting it to be snatched away. Seeing that kind of fear in a child's eyes changes a person. This story is about how simple decency can save a life, and it's a reminder that we all have the power to offer a little grace. Stay with me to see how one good man turned things around. 4 days later, they arrived at Caleb's ranch. The boys didn't look excited. They looked wary, scanning the worn-down house and barn as if waiting for the other shoe to drop. Caleb pulled the wagon to a stop and hopped down. He didn't make any grand promises. He just said, "Thomas, Benjamin, let me show you where you will sleep." Inside, the house was clean but bare. To the boys, it must have looked like just another empty building. Caleb led them to a back room with a single wide bed. "Your mama's been in here," he said plainly, "but you two can have it now." Thomas looked at the real mattress and swallowed hard. "Where will you sleep, sir?" Caleb just shook his head. "In the barn, mostly. Keeps me close to the animals." The boy frowned. "That does not seem right. You giving up your house for us?" Caleb knelt down, meeting his gaze. "This is my choice, Thomas. Your mother earned her keep here, and you will too when you are able. But for now, you just need a safe place to rest and food in your bellies. I am offering you a chance to be kids for a while. No strings attached." That first supper was silent. The only sounds were spoons scraping against plates as the boys ate, watching every move Elena and Caleb made. They were trying to decide if this place was real, if these people were safe. After the meal, Caleb pulled out a worn deck of cards. The boys didn't know any games, so he taught them a simple one. For the first time, a small smile touched Benjamin's lips. It was a tiny victory, but it felt like the whole world shifting. That night, the boys slept in a real bed for the first time in almost a year, with Benjamin clutching a small wooden horse, his only treasure from a long line of desperate children. Benjamin looked scared, like a simple card game was some kind of trick. But Caleb showed them a matching game, and soon enough the boy cracked a tiny smile. It vanished in a second, but Elena saw it. Later, she washed the dust off her boys, counting every rib on their small bodies. She dressed them in nightshirts that were far too big, but soft and clean. Tucked into bed, Thomas whispered, "Are we really staying?" Elena's throat went tight. "Yes, sweetheart, we are." "What if Caleb changes his mind?" he asked. "He won't," she promised. "He's a good man." Thomas thought about that for a moment. Then he asked, "Do we have to call him Papa?" The question felt like a punch to the gut. "No, baby," she said softly. "You call him Caleb. Nobody is trying to replace your father." That seemed to satisfy him. Elena left the boys and found Caleb in the main room, mending a bridle by lamplight. She told him what Thomas had asked. "I said they could call you Caleb," she finished. "Gooden," he said, his hands never stopping their steady work. "That's the truth of it." "They're good boys," Caleb said. "Just scared." "I know," Elena replied, sinking into a chair. The day's exhaustion hit her all at once. "Caleb, I don't know how to thank you." "Don't need thanks," he said, finally looking up. "Just need you to stop waiting for the other shoe to drop." His steady gaze saw right through her. "You don't have to fix everything tonight. We'll manage." That's what folks do. They just manage, one day at a time. She wanted so badly to believe him, but fear had been her companion for too long. "I'm afraid I'll fail them again," she whispered. Caleb was quiet for a long moment. "After I lost my wife and my daughter," he said softly, "I learned something. Fear doesn't protect you from the hurt. It just keeps you from living while you can. You want to honor those boys? Be here. All the way here." Elena fought back tears. "I don't know how." "Then we'll learn together," he said, turning back to his work. Now get some sleep. Tomorrow we start teaching those boys how to live on a ranch." For the first time in forever, as she lay on her pallet by the fire, Elena felt a quiet peace settle over her. The ranch soon found a new rhythm. The boys were given simple chores, helping where they could. But one morning before dawn, Caleb found 7-year-old Thomas in the barn, trying to muck out a stall with a shovel bigger than he was. The boy was scared he wasn't doing enough, that he'd be sent away. Caleb knelt down beside him. "Look at me, son," he said gently but firmly. "I am not sending you anywhere. This is home now. You are home. And nothing you do is going to change that. You understand?" Thomas's little chin trembled. "You promise?" "I promise," Caleb said. That afternoon, Caleb took Thomas with him to check the cattle. The boy's face lit up with a boy Elena had not seen in years. "Can I really?" he beamed. "Wouldn't ask if I didn't mean it," Caleb said. They rode out, Caleb on his big horse and Thomas on a gentle old mare named Daisy. Elena watched them go, her heart full, while Benjamin slipped his small hand into hers. When they returned, Thomas was a different boy. He was bursting with stories about the open range and helping move a stubborn cow. His face was flushed with sun and excitement. "Mama, it was amazing," he yelled. "He did real good, didn't you, Caleb?" "He did fine," Caleb agreed, swinging down from his horse. "He's got the makings of a decent hand." Thomas stood a little taller. That evening, as Elena watched her two sons, one a budding cowboy and the other content to stay by her side, she finally let herself believe it. They were home. A few weeks later, the quiet house was filled with the sound of laughter. The boys were playing cards with Caleb again, their movements confident, their smiles genuine. After they went to bed, Elena found Caleb by the fire. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "You gave them back their childhood." Caleb stared into the flames for a long moment. "I had a boy once, Elena," he said quietly. "Lost him and his mother to the fever years ago. This ranch got real quiet after that. Too quiet. You and your boys. You brought the life back to this place. So maybe I should be thanking you." Summer arrived and the ranch bloomed, and so did the boys. Thomas shadowed Caleb, learning the work of a ranch hand. Benjamin helped Elena in a sprawling garden, his laughter now easy and frequent. Their happiness was the best revenge against a world that had tried to break them. They were living proof that kindness is more powerful than cruelty. Elena and Caleb never talked about romance, but they built something stronger, a partnership, a family. Their story shows that a safe place and a full belly can be the foundation for a new beginning, proving that a little bit of grace can heal the deepest wounds. For the first time in a long time, Elena felt a sense of peace. After losing her husband, she had learned that finding strength did not mean standing alone. One quiet evening, watching her sons play in the creek while Caleb fixed a harness, she felt it. The setting sun painted everything gold, and the sweet smell of wild roses filled the air. This was her home, something worth protecting. But she was about to learn that peace is something you have to fight for every single day. The trouble rode in on a hot July afternoon. A man in a city suit, looking all kinds of out of place, appeared on the road. Strangers rarely brought good news. Elena felt a knot tighten in her stomach. The man stopped his clean, fancy horse at their fence line. He was studying their property like he planned to buy it. "Good afternoon, ma'am," he said, tipping his hat. "I am looking for Caleb Ward." Elena kept her voice steady. "He is not here right now. Can I help you with something?" The man introduced himself as Samuel Pritchard from the Territorial Land Office. He claimed another family, the Kendricks, had a prior claim to their land. He said Caleb's title was a fraud and that he was there to investigate. The world seemed to spin. "That is impossible," Elena said, gripping her laundry basket. "Caleb has owned this ranch for years." Pritchard explained that the Kendricks had abandoned the property years ago, but never gave up their title. Now they wanted it back. The man pulled a satchel from his horse. He said abandonment was a tricky legal issue. The Kendricks claimed they had to leave because of trouble, but always meant to return. "Mr. Ward needs to prove he has a clear title," Pritchard stated, "or he will face eviction." Eviction. The word was a death sentence for their future. This ranch was their entire world. "How long does he have?" she asked, her mouth dry. 30 days, he replied. "Tell Mr. Ward to come see me in town. The sooner this is sorted out, the better." He tipped his hat again and rode away, leaving Elena standing there with her heart pounding in her chest. She had to fight to keep the fear from showing on her face when her son Benjamin asked what the man wanted. She simply said it was ranch business, but she was terrified. When Elena told him the news, Caleb's face turned to stone. The Kendricks, he said flatly, they abandoned this ranch 7 years ago, claimed it was cursed. I filed my claim by the book 2 years after they left. But Elena's heart sank when she asked about the proof, the original deed. Caleb was quiet for a long moment. I only have the homestead certificate, he admitted. The land office told me the claim was solid, so now they were facing a legal battle, a fight they likely could not afford, all because of a missing piece of paper. Caleb saw the fear in her eyes. Look at me, Elena. I am not going to let some land grabbers take this place from us. Not without one heck of a fight. His young son Thomas asked, are we going to lose the ranch? Caleb knelt down to his level. I will do everything in my power to see that we do not. But I will not lie to you, son. This is a serious problem. But no matter what happens, this family stays together. You, me, and Benjamin. That is a promise. That night, staring at their small pile of paperwork, Caleb's voice was low. This is my fault. I should have made certain it was all ironclad. Elena reached out and covered his hand with hers. We will fix this together. You are not in this alone. A silent understanding passed between them. They were a team. I will leave for Helen at first light, he said. He told her the rifle was loaded, just in case. I do not trust the Kendricks, he said. They might decide to make trouble. People driven by that kind of greed can be dangerous, Caleb warned her. You think they would hurt us? He met her gaze. I think being prepared is better than being surprised. If anything feels wrong, you take the boys and ride 5 miles southeast to the Johnson's place. Do not wait. Fear twisted in Elena's gut. But she just nodded. Later, she watched her sleeping children. They had lost one home. She would fight like a wildcat to make sure they did not lose another. Caleb was gone before the sun was fully up, riding east. The next 2 days felt like an eternity. Late on the second day, Elena saw 2 riders coming. Her stomach dropped. These were not friendly faces. Boys, get inside the house right now, she said, her voice steady. She walked out to the fence line alone, ready to face whatever was coming. We are looking for Caleb Ward, the older man with the scarred cheeks said. He is not here. Well, you can give him a message from the Kendricks. He can leave peacefully, or things can get unpleasant. The man's eyes drifted toward the house. Accidents happen out here on the range. It would be a real shame if something happened to those boys of yours. The threat hung in the air, sharp and clear as glass. Rage, hot and pure, flooded through Elena. They were threatening her children. Mama, Thomas whispered from the doorway after the men rode off. Elena pulled her son close, her hand shaking. Listen to me. If those men come back, you take Benjamin and run straight to the Johnson's place. Do not look back. Just run. Promise me. I promise, he whispered back. That night, Elena did not sleep. She sat in a chair by the window, the rifle across her lap. When Caleb finally rode in the next afternoon, she almost collapsed from sheer relief. When Caleb returned, his face darkened as she told him what happened. The next 2 days were sleepless. Then 2 men sent by the Kendricks showed up, threatening them. Caleb's jaw was set like stone. He had gone to Helena to check the records himself. What did you find out? Elena asked, already knowing the answer from the look on his face. It is a mess, Caleb said. Both our claim and their old deed are in the land office records. This is going to court, and it will take months. He told her the lawyer said they had a 50-50 shot, but the legal fees would cost them everything they had. Then we spend it, Elena declared. We fight for our home. Caleb shook his head, the exhaustion clear in his eyes. Even if we win, men like that do not care about the law. He looked straight at her, his fear finally showing. I will not let them hurt you or the boys. If it comes to it, we will leave. We will just pack up and go. Keeping you safe matters more than any piece of land. Just then, their son, Thomas, ran out of the house, shouting, They are coming back. The bad men are coming back. 4 riders were approaching fast. It was the 2 from before, plus 2 more. Every single one of them was armed. Elena, get the boys inside now, Caleb commanded. Bar the door and grab the extra rifle. Do not come out no matter what you hear. She ran, herding her sons into the house as she heard Caleb chamber around in his rifle on the porch. Her hands trembled as she dropped the heavy bar across the door. She grabbed the other rifle and stood watch at the window. The lead rider, a man with a nasty scar, yelled at Caleb. "We told your woman this could be easy, Ward, but you had to make trouble. Mr. Kendrick wants his property back now." Caleb's voice was like ice. "This land is mine. If the Kendricks have a problem, they can take it to court." The man laughed. "Lawyers take too much time. You have until sunrise tomorrow to clear out. After that, we start burning everything down." "You try that and someone is going to die," Caleb warned. The scarred man just grinned. "It is 4 against 1. I like my odds." "You are forgetting the woman inside," Caleb shot back, "and she has every reason to protect this place." The men rode off, leaving their threat hanging in the heavy air. Caleb came inside, his face pale. "What are we going to do?" Elena asked. "We pack," Caleb said quietly. "We leave tonight." "No," Elena said, the word escaping before she could think. "I have run from things my whole life, Caleb. I am not running again. Not from this. This is our home." "Elena, they will burn it to the ground. I cannot fight 4 men alone." "You will not be alone," she said, a new strength rising inside her. An idea began to form, a spark of hope in the darkness. The Johnsons, the Millers, all our neighbors. How many families live close enough to ride here by dawn? Caleb stared at her, understanding dawning in his eyes. They were not alone, and they were not giving up without a fight. On that far ridge, the Kendricks are a threat to every single family in this valley. If they can use hired guns to steal our land, they can do it to anyone. Every rancher here has a reason to stop them. Caleb's expression shifted. "You want to gather a posse. I want to show those men they are not facing 1 rifle, but 20 or 30. Elena stepped toward him, her hands on his arms. "Caleb, we cannot run. Running teaches our boys that bullies always win. That strength is all that matters. I will not teach them that lesson." He looked at her, a quiet war happening in his eyes between fear and hope. At last, he gave a slow nod. "All right, we will fight, but we are going to be smart about it." He turned to his son. "Thomas, I need you to be brave. Can you do that?" The boy stood a little taller. "Yes, sir." "Good. I'm riding to the Johnsons' place to spread the word. Your mama needs you here to watch Benjamin and keep the house safe. You think you can handle that? I can handle it." Caleb squeezed the boy's shoulder, his face full of pride. Then he looked at Elena. "Keep this door barred. If anyone but me comes near, you shoot first. I will be back before midnight, and I will have help." He gave her a quick, fierce kiss on the forehead and was gone. Elena watched him ride into the dusk. She thought about the woman she was 6 months ago, hungry and hopeless. That woman would have run. She would have grabbed her boys and disappeared into the night. But she was not that woman anymore. She had found a real home, and she would not let anyone take it from her. The hours after Caleb left were stretched tight with worry. Elena checked every window and shutter in the house. Thomas followed her like a small shadow, holding the rifle Caleb had left him. The weapon made him look far too young and far too old all at once. Benjamin sat at the table, clutching a small wooden horse. "Mama, are those men going to hurt us?" he asked in a tiny voice. Elena knelt down to look him in the eye. "Not if I can help it, sweetheart. Your father and I will protect this home. All of us will. I am scared." She pulled him into a hug. "Me too. But being scared just means we have to be smart about what we do next." I feel his little body tremble and try to steady her. "Own heart. Why do you not help me make some coffee? Caleb will want it when he gets back, and it helps to keep busy." Benjamin nodded and slid from his chair. As he measured out the coffee grounds, Thomas stood guard by the window, a silent little soldier watching the darkness. He was only 7 years old, but he was already learning how to stand firm when things got hard. Night fell completely. Elena lit the lamps but kept the flames low. She did not want the house to be an easy target. She made sandwiches that no one felt like eating. The coffee pot bubbled on the stove, its smell a small comfort in the tense quiet. They just waited. Around 10 o'clock, Thomas suddenly went still. "Riders," he whispered, "a lot of them." Elena's heart jumped into her throat. She grabbed her own rifle and peered out into the blackness. A line of torches was moving toward them from the west. For a terrifying second, she thought the Kendricks men had come back early. Then a voice cut through the night. "Elena, it is me. Open the door." Relief washed over her so fast it made her dizzy. She threw the door open to see Caleb on the porch. Behind him stood about 20 men. They were ranchers and farmers from all over the valley with hard faces that knew about hard work. They carried rifles and shotguns. John Johnson stood near the front with his sons. These were the faces she saw in town. Neighbors who had seemed so far away until right now. "These folks want to hear from you," Caleb said softly. "They want to know why we are fighting." Elena looked at their weathered faces and their watchful eyes. They came because Caleb asked, but they needed to believe this fight was truly worth the risk. She stepped onto the porch. "My name is Elena Cross," she said, her voice clear in the night air. "6 months ago, I came to Caleb Ward's gate with nothing. I had no money and no hope. Caleb gave me a job when he did not have to. He gave me a safe place to stay. And when I told him my sons were alive in an orphanage, he rode with me to bring them home. He did it just because it was the right thing to do." She let her words settle in the quiet. "This ranch became our home. It is the first real home my sons have known in 3 years. Here, they are learning how to be children again. And tomorrow, men hired by the Kendricks are coming to burn it all down." Her voice grew stronger. "They threatened my children. They told me accidents can happen to little boys. If they will do that to us, what will stop them from doing it to your family when they decide they want your land?" John Johnson spoke up. "Ward says the Kendricks have a legal claim. Is that true?" "They have a piece of paper for land they abandoned," Caleb said. "I have worked this ground, paid the taxes, and made it better. That has to mean something. But the law does not give them the right to threaten a woman and her children." "What are you asking of us?" another man called. "Out. Stand with us," Caleb answered. "When those hired guns arrive at dawn, I want them to see the whole valley standing together. Bullies like that only fight when the odds are in their favor." "And if they do not back down," someone asked. "Then we defend what is ours," Caleb said, his jaw set firm. "I am not asking you to die for my land. I am asking you to show these men that we settle things in court, not with fire and guns. If we do not make a stand now, we will all be making it on our own property sooner or later." The men looked at one another, thinking about their own homes, their own families. Elena held her breath. Finally, John Johnson stepped forward. "Ward pulled my boy out of a flooded creek 2 years ago. I owe him. But more than that, he is right. If we let this happen here, it will happen everywhere." "I am staying." "Me too," said one of his sons. One by one, more men agreed until almost everyone had committed. A few men left, and Caleb did not hold it against them. He just told them to keep their families safe. The men who stayed found positions around the ranch, behind the barn and the corral. Caleb directed them with a quiet authority. Elena brought out hot coffee and all the food she had. The men talked in low voices, checking their weapons. Thomas watched everything with wide eyes. "Mama, are we going to war?" he asked. "No, baby. We are going to make sure a war does not happen." "How?" "By showing them we are strong enough that a fight is not worth it." She smoothed his hair. "Now you and Benjamin need to get some sleep. I want to help. You will help by staying safe. That is the most important thing you can do for me right now." He finally went to the bedroom. Elena tucked both her sons into bed, knowing they would not sleep much. She sat with them until their breathing was slow and even. Then she went back to the main room. Caleb stood by the window, looking out at the dark shapes of his neighbors standing guard. "You should get some rest," he said softly, said without looking at her. "It is going to be a long night. You should get some rest. I cannot. My mind just will not quit." He finally turned to her, his face a mask of worry. "I keep hearing what you said, about this being the first place these boys have felt safe. Now I am the one putting that in danger by picking this fight." Elena came and stood right by him. "You are not picking a fight, Caleb. The Kendricks are. You are just refusing to bend a knee. That refusal could get folks hurt. Surrender could get us all killed," she shot back. "Those men threatened my children. Even if we ran, who is to say they would not just follow us? No, this fight ends right here. I would rather face it on my feet than run from it on my knees. Caleb was quiet for a long time. He took her hand, his rough fingers wrapping around hers. When this is all over, he said softly, there is something I have been meaning to tell you. I have just been too much of a coward to say it. You are not a coward, Caleb. About this I am. He looked right in her eyes and she saw something that took her breath away. It was more than respect. It was something that had been growing between them in the quiet moments. But it can wait, he said. First, we have to make it through tomorrow. Elena nodded, a lump in her throat. The hours ticked by, long and slow. She dozed in a chair while Caleb stood watch at the window, a silent guardian. Outside, the hired guns waited. The whole ranch felt like it was holding its breath. Dawn broke gray and cold. Caleb was still at his post, a coat pulled tight against the chill. Anything, she asked. Not a thing, but they will come out. Men like that always keep their promises. Elena went to check on the boys. They were awake, huddled together under the blankets. She told them to stay down no matter what they heard. Thomas just nodded, his face serious. Little Benjamin gripped his brother's hand tighter. Back in the main room, Caleb watched the road. The men outside were spreading out, getting ready. And there they are, Caleb said, his voice low. Elena saw them, not 4 men this time, but 10 of them, riding easy, their rifles lying across their saddles. The man with the scarred face was right in the middle. They stopped at the fence just like before. The man expected to see a scared farmer. Instead, he saw Caleb on the porch with a rifle. Then he saw men step out from the barn, from the well, from the corral. 20 rifles were now aimed at his 10 riders. The man's confident smirk vanished. Do not reach for it, Caleb called out. I was not expecting a welcome party, Ward. Seems like a lot of trouble for one man, Caleb answered. Mr. Kendrick wants his property. Then Mr. Kendrick can talk to a judge. You are not taking this land at gunpoint. The scarred man looked over the armed neighbors, doing the math in his head. His men were tough, but they were outnumbered 2 to 1. You are all making a big mistake. Mr. Kendrick has deep pockets. He can make things real hard on y'all. John Johnson stepped out from behind the barn, his voice like iron. Then he can start with me. My name is John Johnson. You want to threaten someone? You threaten me to my face. Another man spoke up. I am Sam Mitchell. I stand with Caleb. Tom Brennan, West Valley Farm. I am here too. One after another, they gave their names. This was not just Caleb's fight anymore. It was the whole valley's. The scarred man's jaw was clenched tight. The law says this land belongs to the Kendricks. The law says there is a dispute, Caleb corrected him. Until a judge says otherwise, this is my home. So you have to ask yourself, is Kendrick paying you enough to die for it? The silence was thick and heavy. The hired guns looked at each other. They could start a fight, but they knew they would not all walk away from it. The scarred man spit on the ground. This is not over, Ward. It is for today. Now get off my land. For a second, Elena thought it would all go wrong, but the scarred man turned his horse and barked an order. His men followed, riding away fast. The neighbors watched them go, then a wave of relief washed over the yard. Men lowered their guns, and shaky laughter broke the silence. Caleb leaned hard against the porch rail, and Elena rushed to steady him. I am all right, he said, his voice trembling. Inside, Thomas and Benjamin peeked out the door. Elena pulled them into a hug, feeling their small bodies shake. Is it over, Mama? Thomas whispered. For now, she said, for now. John Johnson slapped Caleb on the back. Well, I reckon that sends a message. If the Kendricks want this land, they will have to do it the right way. Johnson tipped his hat to Elena. That wife of yours has a spine of steel, Ward. What she said last night is why most of us are here. Caleb looked at Elena, his eyes full of pride. She has got more than steel. The neighbors stayed for coffee, sharing what little food they had. It felt like a victory party. As they finally rode for home, they promised to come back if needed. Caleb shook every man's hand, his heart full of gratitude. When it was just family again, he sat on the porch steps, pulling the boys close. You were both so brave, Caleb told them. Doing what your mother told you to do, that takes a special kind of courage. Were you scared, Papa? Benjamin asked. Terrified, son, but running away just takes the problem with you. Your mama taught me that. She could have run, but she stood her ground, and because she did, we all stood with her. Elena turned away, her eyes misty. Caleb went into the barn and came back with a stack of mail he had forgotten about. He sorted through it, then he suddenly stopped. "What is it?" Elena asked. He held up a thick envelope from the court. "It is a hearing date for the land. 3 weeks from now." Elena's heart sank. "That is too soon. They must have pushed it for it," he said. "They probably figured we would be long gone by then." "We're headed to court." Caleb read the letter, his face grim. He said, "We need witnesses and proof we worked this land." When I asked if we could win, he just shook his head. "Honestly, I don't know," he admitted. "They have the original deed. It all comes down to the judge." He tucked the letter away. "But we're not going down without a fight." Later that evening, he asked me for a walk by the creek. The air was cool and smelled like sage. He stopped and turned to me. "I need to tell you something," he started, his voice low. "When you and the boys showed up, I was just a shell of a man, working myself into the ground. You reminded me what it felt like to be alive." He took my hands. "Somewhere along the way, you stopped being a person I was helping and became someone I need. You and your boys are the reason I get up in the morning, the reason I fight." He looked me straight in the eye. "I know things are a mess right now, but when I picture my future, you're all in it, if you'll have me." Tears welled up in my eyes. I whispered, "I don't have anything to offer you." "You're strong and brave," Caleb said, cutting me off gently. "You love those boys with everything you've got. You've made this place a home." He leaned in closer. "I'm not asking you to marry me tomorrow. I'm just asking if you can see it someday. Us as a real family." I looked at this good, steady man who had saved us in every way that mattered. The fear of losing something so wonderful was real. But he was right. You can't run from fear. "I can see it," I whispered back. "I want it." A smile of pure relief broke across his face as he pulled me into a hug, holding me so tight I could feel his heart beating. For the first time, I let myself believe we could actually win. Back at the house, the boys were still awake. Thomas saw us holding hands. "Y'all look happy," he said. "We are," Caleb replied. "Your mama and I are thinking about making this permanent, but only if it's all right with you two." Thomas looked at Caleb for a long moment and then gave a slow nod. "I think that'd be good," he said. "You're fair." And Mama smiles now. Caleb knelt down to their level. "I want to be clear. I can't ever replace your father. But I'd be honored to be someone you can always count on." Thomas stuck out his little hand. "Yes, sir. That would be acceptable." They shook on it, and then Benjamin threw his arms around Caleb's neck. Over his shoulder, Caleb's eyes met mine. This was it. This was the family, the second chance I almost ran from. We would face whatever came next together. The weeks before the hearing were a blur of hope and fear. Caleb gathered evidence and lined up neighbors to testify. John Johnson and others agreed to speak on his behalf. A surveyor came to document all the improvements Caleb had made. But the Kendricks had money and fancy lawyers. They had that official deed. We just had sweat and hope. 2 days before we left for Helena, a telegram arrived. The Kendricks had produced a new document. They claimed they never abandoned the property at all, saying a friend was watching it for them. My heart sank. "But that's a lie," I said. "This place was a wreck when you got here." "I know," Caleb said, his jaw tight. "But we have to prove it's a lie." He figured the only person who could help was old Charlie Brennan, a rancher who used to run cattle through this valley. "He'd know what this place looked like after the Kendricks left," Caleb said. "He lives in Livingston now. I'll ride out at first light." I grabbed his arm, worried. "Caleb, the hearing is in 2 days. He just squeezed my hand. "Then I better ride fast. Old Charlie's testimony could be the thing that saves us." Caleb left just before dawn, pushing his horse hard toward Livingston. Elena watched him go, a knot of fear tightening in her stomach. What if he couldn't find the witness? What if the powerful Kendrick family tried something while he was away? Later, her son Thomas found her in the garden. "Mama, what happens if we lose our home?" he asked. Lena looked at her boy, his face smudged with dirt and worry. "Then we find another place," she said softly. "But I like it here," he whispered. "I like Caleb." Lena pulled him into a hug. "I know, sweetheart, but sometimes the law isn't fair. We have to fight anyway, to show we tried. And you remember this? Caleb fought for us when he did not have to. That matters more than any judge." This fight was about more than just land. It was about showing her boys that you stand up to bullies, no matter how rich or powerful they are. That afternoon, their neighbor John Johnson stopped by with his family to check on them. Their quiet support was a small comfort against the growing dread. Once the boys were in bed, Elena sat by the window, watching the dark, empty road. The long night was filled with unfamiliar sounds, each one making her heart jump. She knew Caleb wouldn't be back yet, but she watched all the same. She felt so alone, guarding her family against a threat she couldn't see. Behind them, young Benjamin stood in the doorway, his face set with a determination that broke his mother's heart. These boys had already lost so much. She prayed they wouldn't lose this too. Caleb returned the next morning, looking worn to the bone. Beside him rode an old-timer named Charlie Brennan. The man looked tough as old leather, with eyes that missed nothing. "Ma'am," he said, tipping his hat, "Caleb tells me you've got trouble with the Kendricks." Elena explained they were claiming they never abandoned the ranch. Charlie snorted. "That's horse manure, begging your pardon. I ran cattle through this valley for years. This place was a wreck. The barn roof was caved in, and the house was falling apart. It was plain abandoned." "Would you testify to that in court?" Elena asked, her voice trembling with hope. "Already told him I would," Charlie said. "It's high time someone stood up to those land grabbers." Elena felt tears well up. Hearing someone else say it, someone who knew the truth, felt like the first ray of sunshine after a long storm. That night, everyone was tense. Caleb went over the legal papers again and again. Before they left for Helena the next morning, Caleb took Elena's hands. "I know you're scared," he said. "I am too. But we are going into that courtroom expecting justice. We're going to tell the truth, and that has to be stronger than their lies. Right?" She just nodded, unable to speak. They rode out together, a small band of honest folks ready to face a family of liars. The courthouse in Helena was a big, imposing building, designed to make you feel small. The courtroom was already packed with folks from the valley, all there to see the showdown. The Kendricks sat at their table, looking smug and confident in their expensive suits. They looked like men who had never lost a fight in their lives. Caleb sat with his lawyer, looking tired but determined. Then the judge entered, a woman named Sarah Whitmore, known for being tough but fair. The Kendricks' lawyer went first, his voice smooth as he laid out a case built on lies and tricky paperwork. Then it was their turn. Caleb's lawyer calmly took apart every one of their claims with tax records and testimony from neighbors. Finally, he called Charlie Brennan to the stand. The old man walked up slowly and told the court exactly what he saw all those years ago. "That property was abandoned," Charlie said, his voice ringing with certainty. "Bull, stop." The Kendricks' lawyer, scared, tried to trip him up. "Mr. Brennan, isn't it true you're friends with Caleb Ward?" Charlie just smiled. "Son, I did not know the man from Adam until yesterday, but I know the Kendricks. They let a place rot, then swoop in after someone else does all the hard work. This is about greed, pure and simple." A murmur went through the courtroom. After the lawyers gave their closing arguments, Judge Whitmore looked over the evidence. The silence in the room was heavy. Then she looked directly at the Kendrick family. "This court has reviewed the original deed," she said, her voice sharp, "and it finds your claim is based on a fraudulent survey filed 5 years after the fact." A gasp went through the room. The major revelation was that the Kendricks' entire case was built on a lie they'd put on paper. Furthermore, the judge continued, the testimony of Mr. Brennan confirms what the evidence shows. This was a clear case of abandonment. She slammed her gavel down. Judgment is for Mr. Ward. The Kendricks' claim is dismissed. The courtroom erupted in cheers. The Kendricks sat there, stunned and humiliated. Caleb pulled Elena into a hug, their fight finally over. They had won. They were home. The truth and a little bit of courage had been enough after all. When the judge called us back into the courtroom, my heart was pounding in my chest. Judge Whitmore looked over her spectacles at us. "This court has reviewed all the evidence," she said. "The case rests on the question of abandonment." She paused and the room was dead silent. "This court finds that the Kendrick family's absence constitutes legal abandonment. They failed to maintain the property or show any real intent to return." The Kendricks' lawyer jumped up to object, but the judge held up a hand to silence him. "Furthermore," she continued, "Mr. Ward's homestead claim was filed in good faith. His improvements to the land are substantial. The judge's voice was clear and final. This court finds for Caleb Ward. The land is yours. In that single moment, the fight was over. Elena's heart hammered in her chest. They had won. The ranch, the future, their home was truly theirs. Caleb pulled her from the chair and into a hug so tight she could barely breathe. He whispered into her hair, "We did it, Elena. We really did it." As the Kendricks stormed out of the courtroom, Elena finally let the tears of relief fall. After a quiet, thankful dinner with their friend Charlie, they started for home. The ride back felt different, lighter. The very air seemed easier to breathe. When their little house appeared on the horizon, Elena knew she was looking at home, for good. The second the boys, Thomas and Benjamin, spotted the wagon, they took off running. "Did we win?" Thomas shouted, his face full of hope. "We won," Elena said, laughing as she scooped them both into her arms. "The ranch is ours to keep." That evening, after a happy supper filled with the boys' stories, Caleb asked Elena to walk with him. They went down to the creek where the sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and gold. He took both her hands. "Elena," he started, his voice steady, "this land is ours now. We have a real future to build. I want to build it with you. Marry me. Not because you have to, but because we choose to right here together." "Yes," she whispered without a moment's hesitation. He kissed her then, a kiss that felt like a promise. When they walked back to the house, the boys knew just by the look on their faces. "You asked her," Thomas said with a wide grin. Benjamin's eyes grew round. "Does this mean you are going to be our papa?" Caleb knelt to look the boy in the eye. "I could never replace your real father, but I would be honored to be your family." Thomas stuck out his hand. "We would like that, Pa." They were married the following Saturday. The small town church was filled with neighbors who had stood by them through the whole ordeal. Lena wore a simple dress, and the boys stood beside them holding the wedding bands. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, the four of them stood at the altar together. They were a family made not by blood, but by choice, struggle, and a whole lot of heart. At the celebration afterward, Caleb found her watching the boys dance in the yard. "Happy?" he asked, handing her a cup of punch. "I have everything I could ever want," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "We have everything," he corrected gently, pulling her into a slow dance. As the sun set, she rested her head on his shoulder. The years that followed were good ones. The ranch grew, the boys became strong young men, and their home was always filled with love. 3 years later, Caleb and Elena welcomed a little girl. They named their brown-eyed daughter Grace, and she grew up wrapped in love and safety. Her big brothers just doted on her, always gentle and watching over her. Thomas never forgot his birth father, keeping his memory alive with stories. But he called Caleb Pa, and every time he said it, you could see the quiet pride in Caleb's eyes. Most summer evenings, when the day's work was done and the sun was setting, the whole family gathered on the porch. Grace would sit on Caleb's lap, asking about the stars, while Elena sat beside them, listening to the easy chatter and her children's laughter. This was what truly mattered. Not the big courtroom fight, but this simple peace, this solid feeling that they belonged to each other and to the land they'd fought to keep. One night, about 10 years after she'd first walked up to his gate, Thomas asked his mother, "Mama, you ever think how different things would be if you'd picked another ranch?" Elena looked at her son, now nearly a man, and smiled. "I think about it," she said, "but I don't believe in luck anymore. I think I was meant to find this gate, this man, and this life." Thomas considered that. "So you think it was all a plan?" "I think we get choices," she answered. "I chose to ask for help instead of giving up. I chose to have hope instead of running away. And I chose to fight. Those choices led us right here." She gestured to the porch where Caleb was showing Grace the constellations. "This is what happens when you choose courage over fear." Thomas nodded, the understanding clear on his young face. "I'm glad you were brave, Mama." "Me too, sweetheart. Me too." The sun finally disappeared, leaving the sky a deep blue. Caleb lit the porch lantern, and its warm glow pushed back the darkness. Behind them, the house stood strong, filled with the life they had built together. Elena Ward sat with her family on the porch of their ranch. She thought about the starving widow who had stood at that same gate, convinced she had lost everything that mattered. But that woman had been wrong. She had not lost it all. She had simply lost one life and found a new one. This new life was not a replacement for the old one. It was something earned through hard work and defended with grit. In the end, that made it sweeter than anything she could have been given. The crickets began to sing as the stars popped out in the night sky. Elena, surrounded by her family, on land that was finally and forever theirs, knew with absolute certainty that she was home.